Alright, so the last video, for some reason the sound cut. Something must have gotten unplugged, I'm so sorry. So at the 21-minute mark, sound just cuts entirely from the last video. So have to re-record. And what I was talking about when the sound cut, I'm sure I won't say it as eloquently this time. Maybe I'll say it better, who knows. But I suspect I won't. Is that red, positionally speaking, can kind of go anywhere. If they have a move in the pocket, that is desirable in 4 or 7. But if they don't have a move in the pocket, then all squares are kind of similar in that they all concede one secure square or one kind of standardly dangerous formation. And so while a move in 2 or 9 it feels more likely to be desirable, something that a move in 3 does is a move in 3 can kind of force the action, right? A move in 2, if they go in 9, they get a Z. If they go in 3, they get a T. Occasionally they have moves elsewhere, but they have kind of these two options, and they have, 3 potential cards they could put in either square, so they have these 6 moves, and often all 6 of them, or many of the 6, are dangerous to check. If we go in 3, they kind of gotta go in 2. Okay, they can go in 7 or 9, yes, but 2 is sort of the obvious square to go in, the free, secure square to take. And especially in a position like this, it can be hard for 7 or 9 to feel all that safe. A7 4 has some safety there, but that might give up an opponent move either in 2 or in the other of 7 or 9. 2 seems the kind of obvious square to go in. We've tried to force the T, and usually the T is the winning move if blue has a winning move here. But the thing is, what red has noticed is, first of all, I only need to calculate your T moves, right? I don't need to also check the Z or also check the Q, right? So I have limited how many moves you can hit me with. So if I can calculate this well, it can be a clearer path to a tie or even to a win than another move would be, because I just don't have to check near as much. And the other really cool thing it does is if you look at red's hand and look at blue's hand, and you think, what does blue's hand have? Well, blue's hand has 2 corner cards and one sort of kind of one directional card with some plus wall potential in the 6-5 a6, while red's hand has these 2 really good up down cards. So red would like to make the game up down, and if we can force the T, we can force that up down nature. A Q, red's cards might not fist so cleanly, but a T, red's cards should have an advantage over blue's, right? And we actually see this pretty cleanly in how it plays out. Turds takes the safe spot in 2, which I think is correct. And quite quickly it's clear, and red has a number of moves to tie here. This isn't the only one. But blue can only take one thing, and then red can take something, and blue won't have a capture card left. That 6-5 a6 is just dead, right? And if turds had used the 6-5 a6 and kept the 4-4-9 a, that would be dead too. Sorry if you're getting weird screens in between, my computer's running a bit slow. But you can see red pretty comfortably gets a tie. And I think this move in 3 is really smart and really cleanly gets that tie. And so it's one of those things where the weak corner got a hand out of blue's hand a card out of blue's hand they didn't want, right? They needed their good up down cards. They wanted to force the T, so they used a card that wouldn't be beneficial in the T in a square that would oblige the T. And I think that was very clever play, and I think Turds kind of put maximal pressure. I like his move in 5, I love his move in 8, but Laguna finds a way here to clarify the position into a tie. So we move on to game 2, and Laguna has first turn. Turd switched his hand here. I think you can see a bit of a counter hand in a couple ways. One is a lot more cards designed to handle 9s, right? 1898 is specifically designed, I'm going to be able to deal with your upward 9s. I noticed you have multiple upward 9s in your hand. That's the direction you have the most 9s. I'm going to, or tied for most with right. I'm going to specifically work against that. I already have 6-6-6-7 to deal with rightward 9s. I'm also going to switch to A8s. Your hand has cards like the 7-6-7-6. That's amazing against 9s. It might be dead against 8s, or at least not near as good. And I'm going to pick these 2 close to opposite cards. Turds mentioned that 8-A-6-2, if the AI didn't change its hand, in 7 might be a possible good starter. I'm not sure how strong that would be, because 9-3-4-9-5 sets up 8-9-8-2 pretty well against it. But, maybe those cards are out of the hand. At some point, that seems like it could be a pretty valuable square that is a hard square for Laguna's hand to deal with, right? Laguna has double numbers facing up, but not facing down. towards down left or towards down right, and the hand is not good at taking eights particularly. So this makes a lot of sense as kind of a move to keep in as an idea, and I think the hand's a reasonable counter hand. So Laguna starts with 9, 9, 3, 4, and 7, and Turds goes 9, 8, 4, 4, and 9. And I quite like this move from the adjacent corner perspective, of kind of which is the side. We have both sides of their starter covered, but if we do, because often I like the adjacent corner that attacks the stronger side, right? If we were really good at taking from 6 and not good at taking from 8, then 9 would be a great square to help set us up for 8. Here we have both, but 9 is still a nice square, and that it really makes red look directionally weak going right, because only 2 of their cards can even take that 4 to the left. So that 4 looks visually like a very weak number, but it's actually a number that's quite easy for our hand to retake. 3 of our cards can do it, and a bit harder for theirs to take. And either of their cards that can take it do not have a high enough number facing left such that they would be safe doing it. So if they took an 8, we could go in 4, flip 7, flip 8, flip 9. So I think this is like a pretty strong corner, even with weak numbers facing out, because it's very hard for Laguna to address when we have such good control over their starter. And I think thus, while meeting the adjacent corner with the middle square is often good and open, not so good and closed, but good and open, here it's not a very tempting option for Laguna. So he ends up going in 1, which I think makes some sense, though does use up a power card, right? 7, 6, 7, 6 looks awful good taking those upward 9s, and I think it's a pretty useful card to hold on to. So I would be more tempted to, if I was going to go there, put something like 9, 3, 4, 9 there, just because it feels less replaceable in my hand. Of course, 9, 3, 4, 9 has a nice combo threat in 6, but so did 7, 6, 7, 6. And anyway, that card in 9 probably isn't extra flipping anything else with the 4, though maybe it is, given the opponent's rightward weakness. But this seems, or given, general rightward weaknesses. This seems like it's using a powerful card, but it's playing in the kind of part of the board I would be tempted to play in. Another downside is it does set up a plus for Turds with 8, 6, 2, and 4. Now, I really like what Turds did here, which is he goes in 6. And he said it might be time to go in 4 or 8, but I think I can get away with 6. And indeed, there's some pressure to eventually occupy 4 and 8, because those are paired squares, and we might not want to leave them for the endgame. Though even in the endgame, Eden 449A works for both those squares, but it's probably not going to be able to take anything else, right? It's got those 2 4s out facing that are pretty weak, so it's going to be good at recapturing 7, but bad at doing anything else. So I think it makes some sense that Turds left these squares open, because he's not that scared about giving Laguna the combos there at the end, because Laguna doesn't really have the combos there at the end. This move also takes advantage of the fact that Laguna has no good moves in 8. They need to capture if they go in 8, or they're just giving away so much real estate. But if they do capture, they get comboed back. And similarly, they can't really go in 4, or they give up 8, and that looks terrible. And so 5 looks pretty bad, though I think it's kind of complicated if you look into it, but not good. 2 just gives up 3 for nothing. So 3's really the square, but it's not obvious what to put in 3. And I think this is a very difficult position. I think for a second consecutive game, Turds is really maximizing the pressure he puts on Laguna. And Laguna ends up finding what I think you'll agree, kind of a miracle, which is 8, 9, 8, 2, and 3. This is very vulnerable. It gives up immediate safety, which Turds correctly takes with 1, 8, 9, 8, and 2. But the numbers all just barely work out here, and Eden turns into this very weird sweeper at the end, where, it can take Veil for his leftward 2, the leftward 7 on 6, 6, 6, 7, it can out of nowhere plus, it can same Veil 4 if Veil 4 goes in 4, and it can overpower 6, 6, 6, 7, and it's just enough to mangle a tie. But really good pressure by Turds. He could not have put more pressure here. Loved his adjacent corner, noticing, this doesn't look like a very strong corner, but it actually is very unpleasant for my opponent. Building around it, leaving 4 and 8 open, knowing that the opponent didn't really have threats there, even if they had 1 card for both squares, and that you could build elsewhere. I think really aware of the directionality of the game, of control over the starter. Really nicely played. Almost converted. Very close to converting. Could not have done better to convert. So we move to game 3, and Laguna changes his hand. And you'll see he's still going for an A9 corner paired with a 9-9 for the opposite corner. Now there's an A8 corner paired with an 8-8 for the opposite corner, and a 7-7-6-6 to deal with 9s. The Turd's hand has moved away from 9s, so it's going to be much more recapturing one's own 9s than taking Turds'. And Turds gets first turn and starts with 9-8-4-4, which has really been a useful card for him, an annoying corner for Laguna to deal with. And here again, so Laguna has 8 covered, and kind of has 4 covered. And they need the same card for both squares. So one key question to this game is going to be, how much value can Laguna get out of the 2-6-A8? Because that's clearly now made into the most valuable card in Laguna's hand. Now, this move fits the weak corner thing. Fits the, if Turds plays well, he can keep Laguna doing weak corners rather than doing something else. Though, as we've seen, those weak corners can be very good moves. But one thing I don't like about this move, and I liked about Turds' move last game, is it attacked... Well, Turds' adjacent corner last game, he had good control of both sides of the opponent's corner, so he could kind of choose where he wanted to go. Here, Laguna only has good control of one side of the corner, and so I really feel he should be starting to set up on the other if he's going to play an adjacent corner type move. He already had a good move in 8. This doesn't really help that. He doesn't have a great move for 4. And so I really like Turds' next move, just taking advantage of the direction of the game and saying, you have only one downward card in your hand. You know, you do have a capture in 4 or 5, but it's actually kind of dominated by my 1-8-9-8. You know, maybe you'll be able to combo back, I can't always play it, but that 2 facing up looks real juicy to me. It is really hard for you to find a nice square for your 2-6-A8. And here, maybe 2-6-A8 and 5 is still best, even though it sets up 1-8-9-8 2 different ways, because it can kind of force the action into, again, a kind of up-down scenario, which maybe works for red, maybe doesn't, because so many of the stuff is comboable. But that's the kind of move, I guess, you have to calculate out, and it looks just horrible. But the other options look really bad, too. A1-6-9, red would love to get out of their hand, but of course it's comboed immediately in 6. That would be the dream square. So kind of left with one move, 7-7-6-6 and 6. All other moves look kind of intuitively terrible and would require a ton of calculation and still probably lose. So we're left with 7-7-6-6 and 6. But this move's pretty dangerous too, because Turds takes up the safety. Turds actually said something interesting here, which is he felt under a lot of pressure here. And he took a while on this move, longer than he took on most of the other moves he made, which was very curious because I was pretty sure this move was just winning. It's just safety. It's really hard for red to make a move. Again, Odin is their only down power, and Odin can immediately be comboed back. Maybe there's a combo back to that combo with 8-8-2-6, but it's so scary there. And Odin in 5 is combo backable 2 different ways. Everything looks very dangerous. Of course, 8-8-2-6 has the combo back from both 2 and 4 there, so we'll get to that move in a bit. There's also ideas of going in 1 to set up combos, but the card you need in 1 to set anything up is Odin there too, and Odin's the most useful card in the hand. So Odin in 1 sets up Black Mage in 2, but Turds can just block 2 and it comes to nothing. Other cards in 1, Turds can probably just block 5 with 6-6-6-7. It's pretty difficult to find a move. The AI eventually goes for 5 with, the sensible idea that Black Mage has combos back in both 2 and 4, but Turds just blocks 2. The combo only would flip one thing, they don't even play it, and get flipped back for a 6-4 win for Turds, and we get a 6-4 win anyway. So I think really nicely handled by Turds. I think Laguna's first move was really disastrous, and if there was a save after that, it was very hard to find. The weak corner did not come through here. But what it did was it gave up critical downward power, and Turds immediately directed the game so that Laguna's remaining cards didn't work. So huge congrats to Turds for, recovering. He lost to Laguna in the last tournament, and I think really convincingly beat Laguna here. Every game putting pressure against, I think, a really strong opponent who found some very good ties and also was never given a chance to get kind of in his game. And we saw Laguna just crush Turds last time they played, and here I think Turds completely returned the favor and advances to the semifinals. So that means Delial and Turds are going to be facing in the semis. Who's going to take it? I'm going to make a preview video coming soon to theaters near you. I'll put that out in a few days. I did record it, but I also lost the sound to that one. Same mess up. So I'm going to have to re record that one. But I'm excited. I believe these two have faced more in official tournaments than any other pair of players if we include TTN. I think this is the most common tournament matchup ever, and I think you'll be surprised at how competitive it is, and I'm really excited for it. The rule set is going to be same plus, same wall, plus wall combo. Levels 5 through 8, total level equals 32. So you could, for instance, have 3 level 6s and 2 level 7s. That adds up to 32. But you could also go like 5, 6, 6, 7, 8. Or, if you wanted 2 8s, you could have 2 8s, but you're going to have a 6 and 2 5s to balance it out. And so that'll be really interesting to see what they go with. And then the other thing is 2 decks maximum of a Battle of the Decks format. So let's say the first game you play FF8. FF8's your deck. You can then switch to another deck, but once you've switched, you are now locked into either of those 2 decks. So if I start with FF8 and you start with FF9 and we tie, and I switch to FF7 and you stay with FF9, I'm now committed to one of FF7 or FF8. You're playing FF9, and you could now add another deck, use another deck, obviously use one deck at a time, but once you've shown your 2 decks, you're committed to those 2 decks. Till you've shown the second deck, you can switch up which one you intend to do. So what I'm hoping, though, probably won't happen, but would be cool if it happened, is, one player, finds an advantage in the opening matchup, the other player switches decks, and now the first player can think, okay, I know which 2 decks they're going to use. Maybe I look at those decks and figure they have a weakness to some kind of corner or some number setup. Which deck gives me that option? And figuring out which decks to use to better counter what the opponent's doing. I hope will be a really cool thing going on. And the fact that you have to lock in might mean there's more targeting able to be done later. We'll see. I think it'll be a cool rule set. And that's it. I'm really excited for the semis. I think Turds and Deli have both played great. I'm going to do a video just hyping that, as I said. And I hope you're hyped for it too. And I think these were pretty interesting games.